Are you working on more than one story at once and possibly struggling a little bit with that? Because that's where I'm at right now, so let's talk about that, shall we? So in the past, I used to write on between 1 and 3 stories at the same time. The past few years, I've really only been writing one at a time when I've been writing, but now I am in this wonderful position that I haven't been in for a while, where I have like 3 or 4 stories that are all clamoring for my attention. So I kind of wanted to talk about what they are and how I'm handling it. A few videos ago I talked about Mälarstaden, which is a new story that I've been making some notes on over the summer, a futuristic sci-fi-ish story. And like I said, I've been making notes on that, and basically I've just written down all of the ideas that I had and all of the things that I need to keep working on. But once I had all of that out of my head, I sort of put that aside and I started working on Arc instead. Because I've been working on Arc for about 3 years, and for maybe half of that time I have been very close to the end. And I'm just sick of being very close to the end, and I want to get to the end. I want to finish it. And by the way, I have to say, when I went back to work on Arc again, I love that story. That is an amazing story. I love the characters, and I love the story, I love the setting. I like the ending that I had sort of brainstormed and come up with before I took a break from the story. I do really like that ending. I feel like that does all of the things that I was hoping that that story would do. So that's a good thing. Apart from that, a couple of weeks ago, I started a creative writing course, writing fantasy. And that course, for now, is mostly just theoretical. You know, what is fantasy? What's a fantasy world? What categorizes the whole genre? And things like that. But in the future, in later parts of the course, we are going to write a story. Not a full-length story, but the beginning of a fantasy novel or a fantasy short story, I think, is what we're supposed to do. Obviously, I can use neither Mälarstaden nor Arc for this course, because they are not fantasy. So I have to do another one. And my thinking originally was that I was going to write on the story that I wrote a little snippet of to send in with the application for this course. And I still really like that story. I like where it's going. I'm going to call it the rebirth story until I'm ready to share a little bit more about that. And it's a really interesting story, and I really, really want to write it. It's an old idea that I've had for a while, but just haven't known what to do with until now. So my original thinking was that I was going to work on that story. However, a few days ago I started having lots and lots of ideas all of a sudden on how to rewrite a story that I wrote a few years ago. It's one of my babies. It's called Blue Breeze, and I've written the first 2 books in the series. It's supposed to be 4 books. And I wrote those, and when I was working on the 3rd book, I sort of entered a writing slump. I didn't have time, and writing just sort of, it wasn't a priority for a while, unfortunately. And then when I got back to that story, I read it and I started thinking about it, and it was just, something didn't really feel right about it. And I wasn't sure what it was, so I wasn't sure how I could fix it, and so I figured I'll leave that for now. Maybe I've just evolved as a person and this story isn't what I should be writing anymore. So I sort of let that lie around in a folder. And like I said, now I've had some brilliant ideas. I really think that they are brilliant ideas on how to make that story better. And that includes basically a complete rewrite. It's going to be taking place at roughly the same time, and the same events are going to play out, more or less. It's the same characters, the same setting and all that, but there are a few tweaks that I think is going to make it a lot better. Again, though, it requires a complete rewrite, which, yeah, that's the thing you're always warned about. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should just write a completely new story, but I can't write this story without these characters, so yeah. Anyway. I also, when I was doing research for my world building series, I looked at this world and I was like, there are some things that I should go back and change, a few small tweaks that will make sense in the history of my world, and it's going to change a whole lot of things, and it's going to make the whole world a lot more interesting. So that's also another thing that I want to do before rewriting this story. Also, speaking of world building, just real quick, The next video in my world building series, which is the workshop where I'm gonna make a fantasy map, that is going to be up next week. It was supposed to be up a little earlier, but I filmed it, and then when I sat down to edit it, I realized that it didn't work. It didn't look good, and I'd also lost some footage, and it was just gonna be a whole lot of work to fix that. So I'm refilming it, and it's gonna be up next week. It should be up next week. Something might still happen. So if you're interested in that, maybe the best way for you to find out if it has been uploaded or not is to subscribe and hit the little bell, because then YouTube is going to notify you when it shows up. So anyway, the point is, I have 3 or 4 stories that are rolling around in my brain. It is Mälarstaden, which is my brand new one that I have nothing on, and I'm plotting and world building and learning about the characters and things like that. It's Ark, which is old, and I'm just trying to get the ending together. And then it's the Rebirth story, which is also a new idea, but set in an old world, so I don't have to do a lot of world building and just mostly plotting. And it's Blue Breeze, which is old but requires a completely new rewrite. And so a good thing about all of these stories is that they are at different stages. And that is really a trick that is very good if you're working on multiple projects, to make sure that they are not all, you're writing the first draft on all of them, because that makes it a lot more difficult, for me at least, to keep track of which story is which and which idea I had for which one. It's a little bit easier if they're in different genres or otherwise completely different stories, but having them at different stages is still preferable either way. The next trick, which is the one I'm working on right now, is to make sure that you know exactly what you need to do for each book you're working on. For Mälarstaden, I need to do world building, I need to get to know the characters, and I need to do the plotting. And on my actual checklist, I have more details. I need to get to know these characters, I have these questions I need to ask them, I need to know these things about the world, and things like that. For Ark, I need to write the ending. I mean, there I also have more details. I need to write this scene, I need to write this chapter, I need to tie up this loose end and things like that. For the Rebirth story, I need to plot and I need to get to know my main character, first of all. And for Blue Breeze, I need to completely replot things. I need to alter my character sheets a little bit, and I have some specific things about the world building that I need to tweak. And the point to having these checklists is so that I know where I am at with each story, so that I can flip between them more easily. So that when I've been working on Ark for a while and I'm going over to Blue Breeze, I don't have to spend an hour or more figuring out where I'm at and what I need to do. I can just look at the checklist and see that, okay, I need to look up this thing about world building so that I can tweak this thing, and okay, let's get to it. Takes 20 seconds. And another thing is to have a sort of schedule. I've had different versions of this, but the one that I'm gonna have now at least is not, Monday I work on this story, Tuesday I work on this story, but it's rather going to be more of a priority list, so that, okay, right now I feel like writing, I don't know what I want to write on. Okay, I have this list, and Ark is at the top of that list. If I don't know what exactly I want to write, I do Ark, or at least I open Ark and I try to do Ark, and if it turns out that that is not actually what I'm feeling right now, I will do one of the other ones. Well, I will do the next one on the list. And right now I have Ark at the top of that list because I really, really wanted to finish Ark. It's been a while since I'd finished a project for real, and I really want to do that, and I want to do that with Ark. Otherwise, the way I do this list, it varies a little bit. If I have 2 projects that are roughly on the same level, like 2 projects that I'm writing the first draft of, I will have one of those. I will usually have the one that I'm the furthest along with at the top of the list, so that I get the first draft of that done and can move that into the next stage, so that I don't have 2 projects at the same stage, because like I said before, it's a lot easier to keep track of them if you're not writing 2 first drafts at once. So if you're writing on multiple projects, do you have any tips apart from the ones that I've said that works for you? Do you have any protests? Do these tips sound completely ridiculous to you? Either way, let me know in the comments, and anyone who is struggling and don't have any tips and just want tips about how to work on multiple projects at once, check it out. There are many, many techniques that I haven't mentioned that other people might. So yeah, I will leave you with this, and I will see you next week for some world building.